Seraphine Voss had a habit of arriving exactly on time. Not early, not late. Exactly. She believed that punctuality was the one form of control a person could exercise over a world that mostly refused to cooperate, and she exercised it faithfully, every day, at the archive library where she worked the graveyard shift cataloging documents that no one had touched in decades. She liked the quiet. She liked the smell of old paper. She liked being the only living person in a room full of finished things. She did not particularly like being told to attend the summit assembly. The letter had arrived on a Wednesday, delivered by a man who knocked twice and left before she opened the door. The envelope was heavy paper, embossed with a seal she recognized from the pack registry. A circle of 7 wolves, each facing outward, each facing away from the others. The letter inside informed her that attendance at the summit was mandatory for all unmated wolves registered within the 7-pack territory. Transportation would be arranged. Accommodation would be provided. Failure to attend would result in a formal review of her pack status. She went. The summit assembly was held in a converted estate on the edge of the city, the kind of building that had been many things before it became this, and would probably be many things after. 400 wolves filled the main hall. Seraphine found the whole situation mildly overwhelming, and actively concealed this fact by standing very still near the right wall, holding a glass of water she had no intention of drinking. She felt it before she saw him. It started in her chest, a low, resonant pressure, like a tuning fork pressed against her sternum, vibrating at a frequency she did not have a name for. Her breath caught. Her hand tightened around the glass. She turned. Kale Dravith, Alpha King of the 7 Packs, had just entered the hall. Werg. He was impossible to miss. Not because of his height, though he was very tall. Not because of the way people moved to give him space, though they did, immediately, and without being asked. It was something else. A density to him, the way certain things have weight that exceeds their visible size. The tuning fork in her chest struck again, and then his eyes found hers. She did not look away. He did not look away. 1 second, 2, 3. He looked at his beta and resumed talking. Seraphine stood next to the right wall and understood what had just happened, with a clarity that was almost impressive in its brutality. She had felt the mate bond activate. He had felt it too. She had seen it on his face, the fraction of a second before the politics closed back over it like water over a stone. And he had turned away. She finished the glass of water. She found a seat near the back. She straightened her spine in the way her mother had taught her, not proud, not performative, just upright. And she sat through the rest of the assembly without looking at him again. She was very good at not doing things that hurt her. The formal letter arrived 3 days later. It came on palace stationery this time, gold-edged, heavy, delivered by the same man who knocked twice and did not wait. Seraphine read it at the kitchen table with her morning tea. The Alpha King acknowledged the presence of a mate bond. The Alpha King had determined, after careful consideration of existing political obligations, that pursuing the bond would not be possible at this time. The Alpha King thanked her for her discretion. The Alpha King hoped she would maintain it. She read it twice. She folded it into quarters. She put it in the kitchen drawer where she kept the electricity bills and her mother's old watch, and a handwritten note from a doctor that she had never entirely forgiven herself for not finding sooner. She went to work. The box arrived at the archive on a Thursday. It had been sitting in the unclaimed section of the storage floor for 37 years. She checked the intake record, and someone had finally flagged it for cataloging. Standard procedure. She carried it to her desk, signed the processing sheet, and opened the lid. Inside, tissue paper, folded carefully. A small bundle of letters in handwriting she did not recognize. A dried flower that turned to powder when she touched the tissue beneath it. And at the bottom, beneath everything else, a sealed leather document stamped with a crest she had never seen. Her name was on the seal. Not her name exactly, her mother's name, Dacia Voss. Underneath, in smaller script, a secondary line, and to her heirs, in direct succession. Seraphine sat with it in her hands for a long moment. She did not open it that night. She signed it into the cataloging system as pending review, and she went home, and she sat in the dark living room, and did not turn on any lights. The mate bond in her chest pulsed with the slow persistence of a bruise, present, insistent, indifferent to whether she wanted to feel it. She went to bed. She did not sleep particularly well. Elder Marin was sitting in her kitchen when she got home the following evening. Seraphine stopped in the doorway. She looked at Marin, small, ancient, smelling of old paper, and something beneath old paper, and then she looked at the tea already steeping on the counter, and she made a very careful decision not to ask how Marin had gotten in. "The document," Marin said. "Did you open it?" "No." Marin nodded slowly. "Good, sit down." Seraphine sat. Not because she was told to, because something in the old woman's voice had the quality of a door closing, and she wanted to be sitting when she found out what was on the other side of it. Marin reached into the bag at her feet and withdrew a document. Not the leather-sealed one from the archive. A different one. Older. The paper was the color of old tea. "Your mother," Marin said, "was the last direct descendant of the first Alpha." Seraphine looked at her. The bloodline was hidden, deliberately. After the first Alpha's line lost political power, the remaining descendants were placed under protected anonymity. Your grandmother knew. Your mother knew. Eventually. She died before she could tell you. Seraphine's hands were flat on the table. They were not shaking. She was distantly proud of this. "The document in the archive," she said, "is the authenticated record of your lineage, sealed by the original Elder Council, held in the city archive for safekeeping, somewhere no one would think to look, because no one was supposed to need it yet. Yet. There is a prophecy," Marin said it simply, the way one might say there is weather. There has always been a prophecy. The first blood walks unrecognized among the packs. The throne begins to rot. The only restoration is recognition, chosen freely, not commanded by fate. Seraphine was quiet for a moment. "Does he know?" she said. "Kale, does he know what I am?" Marin's expression answered before she did. "He knows now. I made sure you were told first. That was the protocol. The heir of the first blood had to know before the Alpha King was informed." A pause. "I came to you first, as I was meant to." Seraphine looked at the document on the table. She looked at her hands. She thought about a letter folded into quarters, in a drawer full of things that had tried to end her. She thought about her mother's name on a seal, waiting 37 years to be found. "What happens now?" she said. "Now," Marin said, pouring the tea, "he comes to you." He came that same evening. No stationery this time, no beta, no formal appointment, just a knock at her door at 9:15, and when she opened it, he was standing in the hallway looking like a man who had rehearsed this and abandoned the rehearsal on the way up the stairs. He was enormous in the small hallway. She noticed again that quality he had, the weight of him, the density, and she noticed, also, that it did not make her want to step back. It made her want to hold very still, the way you hold still when you are certain of your ground. "Seraphine," he said. "I got your letter," she said. He absorbed this. She watched him absorb it. The specific weight of those 5 words, the way they settled over the conversation, like a cover over something that was not yet finished. "May I come in?" She considered it. "You have 2 minutes standing here," she said. "Use them well, and I will decide about the rest." He did not flinch. She noticed this. She filed it away. "There is a political engagement," he said. "It was made before the summit. Before I knew. Before I felt." He stopped. Started again. "The 7-pack alliance is held together in part by a promise I made to Alpha Caro's family. Walking away from it would fracture the alliance at a point where it cannot afford fracturing. I made the calculation." "I know," she said. He looked at her. "I know all of that. I'm not asking you to explain your political situation. I'm asking you to explain the 3 seconds. She held his gaze. "You felt the bond. You looked at me. And you decided, in 3 seconds, that I was something to file away. That is what I would like you to explain." He was quiet for a long time. "I can't," he said. "There is no explanation that is not also an excuse." She studied him. She was very good at studying people. Years of graveyard shifts in silent rooms had given her an excellent understanding of what things looked like when they were being honest. He was being honest. She wished that made it simpler. "Good night," she said, and closed the door. She stood in her hallway and listened to his footsteps not moving for almost 30 seconds before they finally went back down the stairs. The mate bond in her chest steadied the way a held breath steadies. Not released, not gone, just suspended. She did not open the door again. The emergency council session was called 2 days later. All 7 pack elders, Kale presiding, which had a different quality now than it would have had a week ago. Seraphine arrived with Marin, and sat in the seat Marin indicated without argument. The prophecy was read aloud in the original language by Elder Marin, then translated with the flat precision of someone who had been waiting a long time to say something important. When the first blood walks unrecognized among the packs, the throne will begin to rot from the crown downward. Recognition, chosen freely, not compelled by fate, is the only restoration. The room was very quiet. Then came the reports from the territory wardens. 2 of the 7 pack territories had experienced boundary failures in the past 6 days. The invisible lines that held pack land intact, that governed the shift, that kept the 7 packs distinct and functional. 3 wolves in the northern territory had lost the ability to shift entirely. The eastern boundary had contracted by nearly a quarter mile overnight. 6 days. Seraphine counted backward without meaning to. 6 days since the summit. 6 days since the bond, and the 3 seconds, and the turning away. The math was not subtle. Kale sat at the head of the council table, and she watched him do the math too. He looked at her across the room. She did not look away. She was done looking away for the convenience of other people. The prophecy, said Elder Caro, older than Marin, slower, with the careful diction of someone who had survived by being very precise, requires the Alpha King to recognize the heir of the first blood, formally, on record, of his own choosing. The bond is not sufficient. It must be a decision. Silence. And if he does not? Someone asked. Marin answered without emotion. The rot continues. The boundaries continue to fail. The packs lose structure. What holds 7 packs together as a functioning territory begins to come apart at the seams, faster each week, until there is nothing left to hold. Kale stood. He was very still when he stood, the same way he had been still in her doorway, not the stillness of someone paralyzed, but the stillness of someone who has made a decision and is now simply executing it. The engagement with Alpha Caro's family was dissolved this morning, he said. Several people looked at Alpha Caro's representative. The representative nodded once, carefully, without expression. I want to address what happened at the summit first. His voice carried without effort. Not the prophecy, not the bloodline. What happened before anyone in this room knew about any of that. He looked at Seraphine. I felt the bond. I looked at her, and I turned away. I made a calculation, in 3 seconds, that the political cost was something I could not afford. A pause. I was wrong. Not because of the prophecy, not because of what she is, because she was standing there, and I looked away from her, and a person who does that does not deserve what they are walking away from. The room was very quiet. Seraphine Voss, he said, and her full name in his voice had a formality that was not stiff. It was careful, the way you are careful with something you almost lost. Daughter of Dacia Voss, heir of the first Alpha's bloodline, I am recognizing you. On record, in front of this council. He did not look away from her, not because the prophecy requires it, because it is correct, because I should have done it before I had a reason larger than myself. Seraphine sat very still in her chair. The mate bond in her chest did not grow louder. It did not roar or sing or do any of the things she might have expected. It simply settled, the way a compass needle settles when it finally finds north, quiet and certain and done with shaking. She rose. She did not cross the room to him. She stood where she was and she let him see her, fully, the way she had stood at the summit before he turned away. She let him see who she was. The graveyard shift, the drawer full of difficult things, the mother's name on a seal, the hands that did not shake. She stood where she was, and he walked toward her. The territory boundaries stabilized over the following 3 days. The wardens filed their reports. The records were updated. Elder Marin, when asked if she was surprised by any of it, said she was not, and returned to her tea. Seraphine went back to the archive library for one last shift. She pulled the leather-sealed box from the pending catalog, filled out the chain of custody documentation with her careful, even handwriting, and filed it in the permanent collection under Voss, Dacia, Bloodline record, authenticated. Evidence, not inheritance. She did not need the paper to know what she carried. She turned off the archive lights. She locked the door. She walked outside into the cool night air, and Cale was leaning against the building in the light rain. No guards, no formal arrangement, just a very large man who had learned in the past 2 weeks that waiting was something he was capable of. She did not make it easy. She was not required to make it easy. But she walked out the door, and she did not walk past him.